It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. The good news is you have the normal backdrop with the turf back there and, you know, the logo and the name of the show. The bad news is that's because it's just the two of us and no DB this week, which I'm sure people are not very happy about. Nothing to do with you or I, Alan, but just the fact it's DB not here. I think the people are going to be a bit upset.
Should we just put the third little box down there and, you know, just it's like
Maybe
you know,
maybe put just a still image of DB down there.
Yeah, there you go. You can do that.
But no
DB under the weather.
sick.
Apparently,
Yeah.
He and his entire family
Whole
are
family.
sick. So
Yes.
yeah. We'll let it slide this time. You know, as much with the Pittsburgh Steelers, you know, this game, it's an NFC opponent, not necessarily you know the biggest deal. Get healthy, get right. We're gonna need you, DB, for the Baltimore Ravens next week.
That's exactly a little bit of a shorter week too. We need all hands on deck. He's going to need to be here next Friday.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
We'll give him 1 week to recover, but he better be back next week. Alan, same thing can be said. That's actually a great way to lead into the first thing we want to talk about, the injury report. We've talked about these guys all week. Didn't seem like there was a good shot for any of them to go. And lo and behold, George Pickens, DeShon, Elliott, Larry Ogunjobi all rolled out for this game against the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday. And then Monty Adams listed as questionable. We talked about the importance of DeShon Elliott and how big not having him will be in this game specifically, any game, but really this game specifically, how impactful that is going to be. Also not having Larry Ogunjobi up front. When you look at, you know, what this team can do on the ground, that's a massive loss. And then no George Pickens on the offensive side. We already saw, you know, what that meant for the passing game and their ability to have to do some different things and get different contributions last week against Cleveland. Now they go against a tougher test against Philly. So yeah, pretty impactful losses on both sides here.
Yeah, and you know, I'm not sure that these are guys that are like on the cusp of playing either. Like, I mean, there's one video up on the channel here of Elliott and Ogunjobi at practice. Elliott just running, not doing any drills. Ogunjobi did a couple, but man, kind of looks like me out there and not in a good way. Not getting around real well. So like short week the following week, I don't even know if I would and George not there at all. So like I don't even know how certainly I can say that the Steelers are going to get these guys back for Baltimore. I mean, I think it's clear Ogunjobi is the closest, but I certainly wouldn't like say it's a done deal that like, oh, just get through this game and they'll be back. Like, I think the Steelers have to figure some things out about how they're going to play without DeShon Elliott, how they're going to play without George Pickens. I think Larry is, you know, not saying that he's not a good player. I just think he's somewhat easier to replace, especially if they can get Montravius Adams back, which I expect them to. You know, that's a fairly one-to-one replacement. I don't think there's a one-to-one replacement for George Pickens or DeShon Elliott on the team, and so I think it's going to require a little more creativity to fill those roles.
And what an awful time of year to have this happen. I think it was right before the Browns came here, right? Like leading up to that game where it was just like nobody really on the injury report. Obviously still had, you know, Roman Wilson, Cole Holcomb on the IR and stuff, but there was like no one on the injury report due to injury that wasn't practicing. You had guys getting rest and stuff like that. And now you have these three pretty big ones pop up all within, you know, a few days of each other. And just not the right time of year. It's never the right time of year, but certainly not right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of inevitable. It's football. Like, you're going to be playing games without some of your best players. Like, you got to figure it out. Good teams figure out a way to figure it out. I think it makes, you know, like I really looked at these two games, not the Ravens, because we know the Steelers can beat the Ravens, but I think I really looked at these two games against the Eagles and the Chiefs as kind of a litmus test for whether or not the Steelers were real Super Bowl contenders, or if they're just a team that is pretty good and might make it to the AFC Championship game. Like, sort of like the 2019 Titans, right? Like a good team that like we expected to be in the playoffs, but no one was really talking about them for the Super Bowl, right? Like, what are the Steelers? Are they a good team that will be in the playoffs, or are they a real Super Bowl contender? I thought we might get some answers about that between this game and the Chiefs game. And then when you play with like half a deck, I mean, not that may be exaggerating, not half a deck, but less than a full deck, I think it kind of clouds the waters there a little bit. Like if the Steelers go out here and lose by 2 touchdowns, I don't think that means they're not a Super Bowl contender. I just think that means they're missing a couple of players that they don't really have a replacement for right now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And it's interesting because I do view, and I don't know that I would have said this at the beginning of the year, DeShon Elliott, his importance to the defense, and then how you can't have, you look at George Pickens as potentially the most irreplaceable player for them, not saying necessarily the best, but when you look at him compared to the rest of that room, and now being without one of each of those guys, again, not trying to take away from Larry Ogunjobi, but I think they could get it done without him. Without the other two guys that we're talking about, if it's for a longer stretch of time, say that we do see these guys maybe not back until the first round of the playoffs or something like that. It's going to be interesting to see what these next 4 weeks should look like.
Yeah, and I think some people, like I know I made the joke about this being an NFC game. I think some people have sort of made too much of that. Like that only matters for the tiebreakers. The record is still the thing. Like the win and the loss is the most important part. And like if the Steelers want to win the division without beating the Ravens, they really need to win this game. That's the Ravens got the Browns and the Giants while the Steelers are playing, the Eagles and the Bengals. It's going to be hard to keep pace there. So,
sure.
The Steelers could lose this game, lose to Baltimore next week, and all of a sudden that margin of division is down to nothing. I do think this game matters. I do think the Steelers need to be trying everything they can. And like I said, there's no guarantee that these guys are coming back next week or the following week. And we, all 3 of these soft tissue injuries, which are notorious for lingering, nagging, and being re-injured. So, like, the Steelers need to be worried about the idea that they're going to go into the playoffs without one of these guys, let alone like this week, next week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Monty Adams within there, though, thinking that they'll get him back. Was that just an in general statement, or you feel like it will be this week?
I mean, Monty Adams is healthy. I think he could have played last week. I certainly would activate him from the IR this week. I don't know if they will, but I would. I mean, I don't
without
know
Larry O,
it's going to be. I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't, but yeah. They don't have any. It's not like baseball where like you can't like you can stash a guy in the injured reserve that's healthy as long as you want. Like it does. There's no like they're not forced to make a move until they reach the 21 days. And even then, they're not forced to let guys come back to practice. Like Roman Wilson, for all we know, Roman Wilson could be fully healthy and the Steelers just like, nah, never mind, hang out. Like, like that, like there's no rule that says they have to let a healthy player back. So, we'll see I think that's what, that they did that with Corey Trice. Corey Trice was healthy for the last 3 weeks. He was on or at least 2 weeks. He was on the injured reserve. They were just stretching it out as long as they could to see if they could avoid making another roster move. Here, I think they were doing the same thing with Adams, but I think they'll want him this week. Like that, I'd be really surprised if they don't activate him tomorrow.
I agree. So there's some internal reinforcements on the way. Alan, is it too late to look at external reinforcements? Odell Beckham Jr. going to be let go or has been let go by the Miami Dolphins, going to be looking for a new home. Could he clear waivers? Sure. But I'd be curious to see if the Steelers try to put a waiver claim in on him. Is that something you'd be interested? Only 8 catches this year for 55 yards. Certainly is not the player that we once saw. But, the team that needs receiving help, is this a direction they should potentially turn to?
I mean, I don't think I've watched a whole Dolphins game this year, so I can't really speak to like why his numbers are what they are. Obviously, he was very good for the Ravens last year, had over 500 yards and only played 14 games. The Steelers don't have anybody that has proven that they're capable of doing that, at least not recently. If you want to talk about guys like Van Jefferson and Mike Williams earlier in their career, but I don't know if they're gonna. I kind of doubt they would. I guess Nick Faribault reported that they did not put in a claim on KJ Osborne. I think I'd rather have KJ Osborne than OBJ at this point. So I kind of think they won't, but I kind of think they should. I think they should be like to answer your first question. No, it is not too late to be adding to that wide receiver room, like especially considering it's week 15. George Pickens has a hamstring injury with not any real established timetable of when he might be back. Really important games coming up and on the horizon. And like a wide receiver room that just lacks depth of playmakers. And also, like Mike Williams' injury history is not good. Calvin Austin is 5'7" and plays like he's the Hulk. Like, I mean, like they do not necessarily have the world's like most stable group. Van Jefferson's been hurt. And so Skoranek was hurt earlier this year. Do you want to get into a situation where like you're in a must-win game in December and Scotty Miller is starting at wide receiver or Ben Skoranek is starting at wide receiver? I mean, love me some Ben Skoranek. Wrote about the dirtbag quote from Art Smith. Wide receiver 3 is probably not where you want to be using a guy like that. Someone that's been there and done it recently. I mean, Brandon Johnson's on the practice squad. He knows the offense. I think he could probably fill that role, but is he better than OBJ? I don't know.
This is just one thing, and again, like he's had 5 different 1,000-yard seasons. I'm not saying it was his best season or anything like that. Oddly enough, smaller sample size, obviously, because it was only on 64 targets, 35 receptions. Last year, he had more yards per reception than any other year in the NFL. Oddly enough, for Odell Beckham Jr. So after the catch, I think he was still able to make some plays. And again, I don't think that he's
the highlights from his Ravens season. It was fairly good. I don't know what happened in Miami this year. I don't know why he hasn't been as productive. And I think it would be better if he could clear waivers and you could sign him to the practice squad. I think if he clears waivers, signing him to the practice squad is kind of a no brainer. However, the one sort of big caveat here is that OBJ has kind of been known to be a pot stirrer, if you will. A guy who's not great in the locker room. He sort of notoriously got into drama with Baker Mayfield in Cleveland, got himself traded to the Rams. I don't know if that's what the Steelers are looking for, and I don't know like how they would go about knowing whether that's what he's going to be or not. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I have no clue, but
like, why are the Dolphins the Dolphins aren't even eliminated? Like they're still very much like in the playoff hunt, and they're cutting him like probably for some reason. I mean, it was reported that it was because he wants more touches and they're willing to find someone to let him. I mean, no one is going to give him more touches than that's any good. Like the Steelers aren't going to give him any, like not unless somebody else gets hurt, would they be giving him more touches? Like it's not like he's going to come in and get 10 catches a game here. So would he be okay being like wide receiver 5-6 as depth for a playoff run? I don't know. If he's not going to be okay with that, then that is not a guy you want around when he's not okay.
Maybe he watched Hard Knocks and he's been so impressed by Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's like, I got to be there. And that's what this is all about.
Maybe he watched Hard Knocks and said, I really had a good thing in Baltimore, and the Ravens seem to have a problem with their trade deadline acquisition of wide receiver.
Well, if you watched Hard Knocks and you're just going based off that, you had no clue that happened.
Yeah, you wouldn't know that. But maybe just reminded about how good things were in Baltimore and say, hey, things aren't working out with that Deontay guy. What if I got myself cut? Would you guys take me back? If you're the Ravens, wouldn't you put a claim in on OBJ and cut Deontay after you play the Steelers?
Maybe. Like the thing with that though is, did they want Deontay to latch, or do you just not care at that point? Latch on to like a Kansas City or a Buffalo, somebody else in the AFC. Chargers, they've been snooping around for other receivers as well.
Yeah, I guess maybe you just stash him on the roster just to keep him away. I don't know.
Yeah, like what's more valuable? I guess is what I'm saying. Like I would probably just say, man, we're not releasing you. Like it's more valuable for you to not be there potentially than us releasing you.
I'm sure they're not going to release him before the Steelers game. I'm sure of that. But anyway, I think they could say, I could see them saying OBJ is what we were looking to get at the deadline that we're not getting. And make that move for sure.
Yeah. Again, last year, 14 games played, 64 targets, 35 receptions, 565 yards, good for 16.1 yards per reception, 3 touchdowns. 27 of his 35 receptions went for a first down. as well.
I've discovered since tweeting this article that I wrote this morning that Steelers fans really do not like Odell Beckham. Like, really do not like him. I don't like the reaction to me tweeting that was like very strong. The people do not want him.
I mean, do you think I guess he's a pretty polarizing guy. Like, if you're still chasing whatever, like if you think that he's one of the more overrated receivers of all time, made most of his name based off a one-handed catch or whatever, and like you're kind of expecting, like, but that shouldn't be the expectation of what you're getting with him at this point in his career anyway. Like, I don't know. I can't tell you why. He also played in Cleveland. Does that have anything to do with it potentially?
I
At
mean,
one point,
Cleveland and Baltimore is not generally a path that get you beloved in Pittsburgh. I will certainly acknowledge that.
That was him that Tomlin was talking about when he yawned that one time, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah,
he was
yeah,
asked about
yeah.
That'd be funny.
But also, like,
he
he hated it in Cleveland and like got himself traded and screwed the Browns over. So like,
thumbs up.
Shouldn't the Steelers fans appreciate that? Isn't that what you do? If you got stuck in Cleveland?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was debating buying his jersey. No, not seriously, but anyways, we'll see if that comes to fruition. Like you, I doubt it, but I am curious how that does end up. If it's not the Steelers, where does he go to potentially? That is a in the wild card mix at the very least, or if not a stamp playoff team.
And I think the idea that they should still be looking, especially where they're thin at wide receiver, is why not? Like I don't understand the thought process that you wouldn't want to bring someone in who you feel like is an upgrade.
It is interesting though, like 3 straight weeks we've seen a receiver become available. Josh Reynolds and KJ Osborne, then Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah, where did Reynolds end up?
Jacksonville. For some reason claimed him. Right. Yeah. But anyway, okay, let's talk more about this game, Alan. Since it is Friday, we got to do matchup and prediction stuff. When I say Philadelphia offense versus Pittsburgh defense, then now without DeShon, Elliott, Larry Ogunjobi, where does your mind go to first and foremost?
Cam Hayward.
Okay.
I mean,
that's the guy. Huh?
I think that's where a lot of this falls. You can't beat, I was talking to Cam Sutton today, and it's like the Steelers play teams with 2 good receivers. And certainly A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith are like one of the best receiver pairs in the league. But like when you play the Bengals, who do have 2 good receivers, right? Or when you play the Dolphins, not the Steelers have recently, but like who have 2 good receivers, it's a little different than playing the Eagles, because the Eagles have 2 really good wide receivers, but really just want to run the ball. And so normally teams that really just want to run the ball don't have that. Like, they're not paying what the Eagles are paying Devonta Smith to be a wide receiver too. And so the passing component of it becomes easier to defend because it's not a focus of the talent procurement process the way it is on the Bengals or the Dolphins. And so like it's so weird to say, but like AJ Brown and Devonta Smith might be the best wide receiver duo in the NFL, and it doesn't matter how you defend them if you don't stop Saquon Barkley. Like it just does not. Like if you don't stop Saquon Barkley, they will beat you without ever having to throw to those guys. Like they're the changeup and they're nasty. And it starts with the run game. And Cam Hayward has been maybe the best run defender in the entire NFL this year. I tell you what, we've been talking about Cam Hayward as comeback player of the year. We're talking about Cam Hayward as maybe a borderline DPOY candidate. We've been talking about him as an all-pro defensive lineman. You want to go out there, Cam Hayward, and you want to win some of those awards in a national TV window with the entire league watching at 4:30 on a Sunday. Go hold Saquon Barkley to 50 yards. You do that, like you're going to get a lot of votes for that game. Like that's the job for the Steelers in this game, is because look, those receivers, once you get them into one-dimensional mode, they're still going to beat you a whole bunch. Those guys are still really freaking good. Do we recall what happened in 2022, right, where they just torched the Steelers secondary? Now, I think this unit is in a little bit better shape than that unit was, but if you don't stop Saquon, it doesn't matter. So if the Steelers want to be real, And Cam's the run stopping guy. I think it starts with him. Shut it down. Like, bully this Eagles offensive line that's been one of the best in the league. Stop Saquon Barkley. The Steelers can win this game. If they don't, they can't.
Go back to last year and look at some of like the times that they played really good wide receiver duos. Obviously, we saw the Rams last year at one point. We also saw, and I know that he's not having this type of year this year, and obviously Brandon Ayuk got hurt, but Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk in the opener last year. But the difference to me too, like Alan, is I don't know enough people that are talking about like the line, right? Like literally everything about this Philadelphia offense is scary. Like they want to run the football. Saquon Barkley was kind of like the last piece that was dropped into that. They probably could continue to get by with a back like a DeAndre Swift or anything like that, but they said we're going to go get Saquon Barkley. Probably also nice to take him out of their division rival is building as well. Drop him in here. Not only what he does for the run game, but what he does for the pass game too. And he felt like he was really the one piece that was kind of missing for them within the offense. So yeah, it certainly all starts with Saquon. But my point in bringing that up for the other guys, look at how things got out of hand last year in that opener against San Fran. Do you feel like maybe too much attention was paid to a Christian McCaffrey, and that's why a Brandon Ayuk went off? Could that happen on Sunday if too much attention is paid to a Saquon Barkley? Could we see a Devontae Smith or an AJ Brown go off because of that? I know that the defense is different. There's a little bit different personnel, but I thought it was interesting to bring up that as well.
I mean, yes, you could see that, but I don't think that makes that like bad strategy. Like I meant what I said. Like, if you can't stop Saquon Barkley, it does not matter whether or not you can stop the receivers. Like, that has to come first. And
Absolutely.
so I don't think, like, yeah, can you pay too much attention to Saquon Barkley and get torched by the wide receivers? Sure. But then you just have to win a shootout. If you can't stop Barkley, you can't win at all. So, like, like, you just got to give yourself a chance. Like, I don't know that there's any other way besides slowing down Barkley to beat this team. And especially when you're built like the Steelers are. Could the Bengals come into Philly and beat them 54-45? Yeah, maybe. But like, the Steelers aren't going to do that. And so I think it has to be Barkley.
I feel like there's a lot of like popcorn type matchup as my alarm goes off in this one, being that you take a look at the tackles that Philly has, obviously, in Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata. You look at the edge rushers the Steelers have in TJ Watts and Alex Highsmith, and even beyond that, the depth they have in Herbig, Preston Smith. Look at the outside. Could we see just Joey Porter going around with AJ Brown, Dante Jackson, with Devontae Smith, and how you defend those guys? But I just feel like there's so much star power, if you will, that's going to go head to head within these two units as well,
especially when those units are on the field. But yeah, I mean, I think the Eagles are going to leave their tackles one-on-one a lot. They like to double team the middle to open up rushing lanes for Hurts to scramble out of. The Steelers have to find a way to keep him in the pocket. That was a problem for them the last 3 weeks, twice against Winston, once against Burrow. They let him get free and make big passing plays down the field. I think they did better in the second half against Cleveland against that the last time. I think they're going to have to continue to keep that cleaned up. It's a big challenge, man. This is a good team. I think the Eagles defense is really good against the pass for a lot of reasons, but I think they are, like, would you agree that that's the less dominant of these two units?
For Philly, or just in general within this
Philly.
game?
For Philly, yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I would agree with that.
Yeah, like, I think the Steelers can move the ball. Now, the absence of George Pickens might make that iffy. But, like, I think the Steelers should be able to move the ball on the Eagles. In terms of, like, specific matchups, I don't know. It's one of these ones where I'm not sure I have a really good, like, the Eagles defense is not, and it's so much like watching the same team in the mirror. Like, they play different tactics, but like, the Eagles defense isn't good because of X's and O's. It's good because it just is more physical than you and wears you down over the course of a game. And so, like, that doesn't, like, the matchups then become like not really man versus man, but like almost kind of unit versus like the Steelers' young offensive linemen are going to have to rise to the challenge of maintaining their physicality against two waves of Eagles defenders who are both really good for 60 minutes. I don't know if there's like a one-on-one matchup I care about there, but like that is going to be the challenge for the Steelers is can their offensive linemen still win in the fourth quarter when they're tired and the Eagles are fresh because they're playing half as many reps?
I want to know. I'm curious to see what Philly's plan of attack is with their corners and how they match them up with the Steelers receivers without George Pickens. I mean, Quinyon Mitchell's been awesome as a rookie. Cooper DeJean's been awesome as a nickel. I think the argument is there that Darius Slay's actually been their worst corner. And I'm curious to see who he matches up with and if Russell looks that way a ton. And if I would have looked at this matchup on paper earlier in the season, like even at the beginning, and said, where do you want to attack this Philly defense? I would have looked at their off ball linebackers, but oh my goodness, what they've done with Zach Bond and turning him into the player that he's been this year. And even to Kobe Dean, who's an undersized linebacker, they just put him in the right spots. I mean, I'll credit to Vic Fangio and that staff for what they've done with this, because I would have at the beginning of the year thought that there were certain things, certain holes that you could pick out with its defense that you can attack, but they're playing like a unit that's like 3 levels deep right now that I don't know where you look to specifically to attack.
Yeah, there isn't an obvious weakness. I think you just like they'll bend but not break. Could be a big field goal game for Chris Boswell. And I think not having Brandon Graham could be an issue for them. Like that, like I don't think they've been as good since he's been out. And I'm not sure that they've really replaced him. Got hurt the week of Thanksgiving. So it's only been a couple games without him, but I think that's been a significant loss for them.
I feel like certainly because he's like a rotational player at this point, but certainly the way that he sets the edge as a run defender, because I don't know that you trust like a Josh Sweater and Nolan Smith to do that as many reps as they have to without a Brandon Graham.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm curious about that as well. If it turns into a special teams battle where special teams could be the difference, I think you got to like the Steelers' chances. I mean, as good as Philadelphia's units might be as well, give me the Steelers' special teams against anybody.
Yeah, for sure.
If that becomes the difference. All right. Anything else to add, like matchup wise, before we get into some of our predictions?
Just really want to shout out Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. They're 2 rookie corners. Yep. Like, man, are those guys good. I scouted them pretty heavily throughout the pre-draft process last year. I feel like we talked about them a lot here on this show. Like, they're really good players. This is going to be really tough sledding for the Steelers. Like, and without George, I don't know that like the Steelers have a win matchup there. It's just going to have to be Russ with some magic at the line of scrimmage, I think is the Steelers' best weapon here. And honestly, I think if you line the teams up like position by position, it's very interesting. Okay, edge, I think you probably give the advantage to the Steelers over every team in the league. So, yeah, certainly. Outside of that, quarterback might be the place where I feel the best about the Steelers coming into this game compared to the guy in the Eagles.
Yeah. Yep.
When was the last time you said
that? I don't know.
Like, when you're talking about playing a really good team, like the Eagles are at worst the 4th best team in the league. And I think like Russ is playing better than Hurts is right now.
Yeah, certainly is right now. And I'd be curious to see how different it looked, flipping positions that they're in as well. But okay, let's get into some predictions here then. You want me to start, or you got yours already? Your bold predictions for this game?
No, you go ahead and start.
Okay. So my bold prediction for this game, I like it when we get like the opposing team involved in these bold predictions. I'm going to say Kenny Pickett plays in this one. And I'm not going to say it's because of a blowout or anything like that. I think this is a thing for Nick Sirianni. The way that he talked to Saquon about breaking a rushing record, like went up to him on the bench. He seems very aware of when players want something to happen in the course of a game, whether it's, for individual purposes or whatever. I think he's going to get Kenny in there at some point for some play.
I like it. My bold prediction is that a non-traditional receiver is going to catch a pass. And I
Okay.
specifically left it that vague because we talked about like thrown to a tackle. I think this is a great week to do that, by the way. Maybe like a little bit of Justin Fields at wide receiver. I don't know, just throwing it out there. Like
I want to see it.
Try to play or two, see what happens. I don't know. I don't think it's crazy. So
and it shouldn't be a bold prediction, but I'll throw out there as well for Steelers wise, we're going to see both backs on the field for at least 7 plays.
I don't know about that one. I wish, but I don't.
I'm throwing it out there.
I wish, but I don't see it. But I do think you could see some trickeration, as the dear Craig Wolfley would call it.
Okay. All right, you got to go first on game prediction then.
All right. I think this game is not going to be that close. I don't think the Steelers really have the horses to keep up with the Eagles. If it's a shootout, I'm not sure that the Steelers defense matches up that well, especially without DeShon Elliott. I don't think it'll be a blowout because I think the Steelers will turn over Jalen Hurts while Russ will keep the ball, and that'll keep him in it. But I think this will be a game where like the yards are very lopsided, much more lopsided than the score is. And I think the Eagles will win like fairly comfortably. I'll say 28-17.
Oh man. All right. I am in the same ballpark. I believe the Eagles win as well. I believe it's a 2-possession game, but you're going to be thinking, like you. I think you look at the score at the end of the game and you're like, oh, that's closer than it feels like it should be. The number that I've had in my head is 26-16, so I'm sticking with that. I think the Eagles win this one. I think maybe even like the Steelers score late to make it look a little bit better as well. And I'm not going to feel, much worse about this team, if at all, based off this performance.
None. Will not feel any worse about this team if they lose this game.
It's all about,
unless they don't get George back, and then
that's what I was going to say. The health
won't be as good. Like that. It's just is what it is.
Yeah, it's about the health for me than it is the result of this game in terms of how I feel about the team. So that needs to start trending in the right direction more than they need this result on Sunday, is what I'll say about that. Alan, the last thing I want to do real quick is just give some shout outs here because I promised the people that give us reviews on Apple Podcasts that I would give them to them. And it's a shame Derek isn't here because I'm fairly certain this is his wife. This first one that I came across. T-Bell 43. I'm 100% sure this is Tiff. Really appreciate the way the boys cover the Pittsburgh Steelers, honest and open. Alan provides the facts, whether you like it or not, and Smitty provides the fan point of view. Hands down the best coverage of the team in an audio setting. Also, check out the written work at SteelersNow.com. They put that in there. So I'm 100% certain that Tiff just wanted to promote there. Shout out to Tiff. And shout out to DB. Tiff's got to be sick as well, so hope she feels better too. PJ says, I listen every afternoon while at work. Love Alan's take on the Steelers. Really enjoy the banter between you two. Thanks for the entertainment and information. Thank you, PJ, for listening. Jason Murphy says, this is the perfect mix of fan perspective from Zach and the analytical facts from Alan. Always great content. Love the quick morning updates as well. Keep it up. Appreciate that. Jay Bookser 22 says, I'm true diehard Steelers fan. There's only one podcast that I will listen to, and that's the Steelers Afternoon Drive. These are the guys who truly know Steelers football. Many podcasters don't understand how the Steelers organization operates and are just a bunch of hot take people. Alan and Zach give you true entertaining information on what they know is going on the field and inside the building. Have to give this a listen if you haven't already. That's a good one. Appreciate that. This one is a book. I mean, real quick, I'll just give you, if you're watching on YouTube, this is one of the reviews that was left for us. There's a lot within there. So I'm kind of like ciphering through this here, but Mupp Hears said that this past spring found myself craving some Steelers anything, football anything. Time had passed from the Super Bowl and the loss in Buffalo, and it was time for the Steelers. My son watches plenty of YouTube, plenty of mindless stuff, and that's when I decided to type in Steelers football into the search. Basically, that's how they came across us. That's how they found us, and now can't get enough. This is where he goes for Steelers information, along with the likes of Nick Farabaugh and his new venture, Chris, Dale, shouts out some other people. This is the show of shows. Appreciate all the work and commitment to keeping us informed and entertained. Thanks, Alan, Smitty, and DB also. Thank you, guys. Appreciate all that you do.
Yeah, thanks, DB. For nothing.
And then the last one here. This is from
us on a Friday.
Yeah. This is from our girl Brooklyn, who always is commenting on the YouTube as well. Best Steelers podcast with a bunch of hearts. Alan gives an honest no nonsense breakdown. I almost said nonsense. No nonsense. Sorry, Alan. Breakdown of Steelers football. His
Sometimes
perspective
my nonsense is honest.
It's in there. Yeah. I have come to rely on as a fan, local writer who is in the locker room, knows football and the players better than the national media. AM and PM shows are how I start and end my day. Zach is a wonderful co-host, makes this duo my favorite by far. Fridays with DB and morning and afternoon drive, A++. Well, you didn't get the Friday with DB this week, Brooklyn. Sorry for that. Only one person to blame, and that's DB. But otherwise, we appreciate that, Brooklyn. We appreciate all you guys. Thanks for those reviews. Those were just some of the shout outs I wanted to give. Good stuff.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Alan, you know the drill before we get out of here. Actually, people might change their mind on giving us those reviews based off us both predicting a Steelers loss this weekend. But anyways, tell the people they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now site's account, SteelersNow.com. Go there, read the words so I can get paid. Like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube platform so you don't miss an episode of Steelers Morning Rush, Steelers Afternoon Drive, Sights and Sounds. We got another episode of Steelers Spotlight tomorrow with Aaron Becker, special guest Devin Jackson, the Philadelphia Inquirer. Going to break down Steelers Eagles from the other side. Devin is a real NFL draft nutcase.
Yes.
So even if you just tolerate Eagles coverage, if you love the NFL draft, follow Devin Jackson. Check out tomorrow's podcast. Don't miss it.
He's a sicko. He's like DB and a lot of other people within the community. He'll find those guys at like the real small schools. Like he's a day 3 aficionado.
I'm pretty sure he was on Quinyon Mitchell like before he committed to Toledo.
He was on Quinyon Mitchell. Yeah, that's what I was just saying. Before he was in college.
Before he committed to Toledo, he knew he was good.
Right out of the womb, the Mitchells were welcoming Quinyon Mitchell into the world, and Devin Jackson was there to say he was going to be
day one. Day one.
Good stuff. Anyways, leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else. Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from, you'll find us there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing over on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere. Zachary Smith, PGH, Alan Saunders, and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.